Hello, it's Scott Manley here with some Kerbal Space Program. Kerbal Space Program has of course been released on consoles, and so I want to do some basic flight videos and things like that. This one is going to be slightly different because of course it's not 100% stock. We have Mech Jab, we have some various other mods and bits and pieces, and we have one particular mod which is a couple of years old that is surprisingly tasty as these things go. So yeah, first stage of course launches us onto a suborbital trajectory. I just let it burn out, even though it's lifting my Apple apps up, well, quite a bit higher than the 100 kilometers that I typically like for a lunar transfer. A lunar transfer, did I say? I should say mooner. But this second stage is altogether more interesting and delicious, as we say. So we're just separating that. The engines don't need to fire just yet because we're not ready to circularize. But there we go. Payload fairings have deployed, and we have the hamburger in space. Yes, this is not going to be the first hamburger in space because, of course, a bunch of students from MIT, or was it Harvard? I can't remember. One of the East Coast universities, they did indeed launch a hamburger into space on a weather balloon. This one is, of course, a whole lot larger and is launching on a rocket. It is also going to go all the way to the moon. So of course the first thing we're going to do is circularize our orbit using the upper stage of this rocket. This rocket will get us into Kerbal orbit, and then it will have enough fuel to put us on a transfer orbit, a Transmuter Injection orbit towards the moon. And from there we'll be able to actually perform the descent and landing and possibly return using nothing but the power of ketchup. Of course, this is not realistic ketchup. I mean, I know ketchup does have quite a high proportion of hydrogen and, carbon and all sorts of things we find in rocket fuel, but it doesn't flow quite as well, and it is a whole lot more tasty than rocket fuel. Regardless, the laws of physics for a hamburger in space are the same as the laws of physics of a spacecraft in space. So to perform the Transmuter Injection, I right-click on the moon, I target it, I create a maneuver node, more or less at 90 degrees to it, and drag it until I get something that looks like it'll be an impact or an encounter. 4 kilometers, my goodness, that's surprisingly accurate for a simple piece of junk food. And I should be clear that while this will set the record for the highest man-made or Kerbal-made hamburger, it will not, of course, be the furthest hamburger from Earth, because the furthest hamburger from Earth is a protoplanetary disk. Turns out that there's a halo above and below some planetary disk which is full of dust, so the halo of material is illuminated by the star, and along the middle is a dust lane which looks dark, so it looks like a couple of white patches with a dark bit in the middle, and somebody apparently must have been snacking and had burgers on his mind when he named it, because it has, well, the name has been accepted. I mean, Gomez's hamburger is a much snappier name than IRAS 18059-3211. Yes, sometimes a little bit of art is needed in amongst the science, such as this wonderful moment where the sun is eclipsed by Kerbal. Seems like a perfect time to choose to ditch that upper stage. Sure, it has plenty of delta V, but we're going to be on ketchup power from this point onwards. So for reasons of expediency, I cut out the orbital insertion burn, which is pretty simple. More importantly, I really wanted this magnificent sound effect to be heard fully and appreciated. So we get into position to perform the Deorbit Burn and start squeezing out that ketchup. Oh yes, no, that is ketchup. It's not anything. It's not brown sauce. It is red. Kynes tomato ketchup. Kerbal, biohazard, radioactive. Fantastic. That's probably why it gets such high specific impulse, because I'm pretty sure if you calculated the specific impulse of squeezing a ketchup bottle, that you wouldn't get anything like the efficiency this thing has. Of course, this is a complete, fully functioning spacecraft. It's not just the ketchup. We have fuel tank in some of those buns. We have power generators in there. We have pickles, we have tomatoes, we have lettuce, bacon, a burger, and yes, a whole lot of bold flavor and descent engine power. Yes, thanks to the potent power of ketchup, it has a thrust-to-weight ratio of about 20-1. Anyway, as we descend towards the surface to become the first sandwich on another world, I should point out that, on Gemini 3, I believe, John Young brought another meat sandwich into space. He famously brought a corned beef sandwich. He was on a mission with Gus Grissom, and they both shared in it, but after returning to the ground, apparently Gus was reported that after our flight, our superiors at NASA let us know in no uncertain terms that non-man-rated corned beef sandwiches were out for future space missions. Well, at least until they finally figured out how to do food in space. Regardless, we are figuring out how to land on the moon here with an engine which is massively powerful, basically dropping the speed down to, about 60, 50, 60, 70 meters per second. And then because we have such high thrust to weight ratio, I can do this. Very slight deceleration and then very carefully just trying to write this down here. I'm not touching the controls. I'm entirely relying on the SAS here to hold the retrograde velocity here and trying to balance my deceleration so that I don't slow down too quickly versus too fast and get down nicely. The ketchup does seem to have a vectoring nozzle, presumably to give us more control over the descent engines, or alternatively to make sure that it can distribute ketchup evenly across the entire surface of the moon. Whatever it is, we're about to land in a giant hail of ketchup. Touchdown! Touchdown! And due to the power of the reaction wheels in this thing, we can literally keep this thing balanced on its nose. But it rolls around, takes a look around, yeah. Now, as for the science that this thing will do on the moon, there isn't any. It's just a delicious sandwich to be sent there for to make people feel at home. Not that there's anyone there, so they're not going to be made feel at home. So, now, of course, this is a special space burger. If a regular burger went to the moon, it would have a lot of moon dust sticking to it, and it wouldn't be particularly palatable. Also, this has reaction wheels. Normally, you would have to put these things on legs to keep it balanced, but this thing just simply has an amazing power of suggestion to bring itself upright once again. You could see the bacon kind of reacting, willing itself vertical. And now that we fixed that, we can start heading back into orbit and perhaps bring it home. It was giving me a chance to mention some other famous sandwiches that have gone to space. So, this year even, Tim Peake paid a visit to the International Space Station, and of course, famed Michelin-starred chef Heston Blumenthal basically put together a menu for Tim to remind him of home, including a bacon sandwich. And the bacon sandwich was reported to cost millions of dollars, which is really quite an exaggeration. No, Heston Blumenthal, he worked for free with a company that specifically cans food for the space station. He came up with special high-density, crumb-free bread, and he came up with coatings that would make sure that moisture wouldn't migrate into the wrong place, and eventually came up with a bacon sandwich in a can which could be sent to the space station, and apparently it was a hit. I mean, normally you're not going to get sandwiches in space simply because crumbs that come off of these things can be dangerous. Yeah, I mean, they could get into somebody's eye or somebody's lung. They could be really horrible. Bread in space tends to actually come in the form of soft tortillas. Soft tortillas with their, high gluten content and everything, they fold nicely, they don't break into crumbs, and you can of course make a sandwich with that if you like. There is actually a video of some astronaut putting together a peanut butter and jelly sandwich using flour tortillas. Yes, that is a very strange notion, but it's how they do it on the space station. Anyway, re-entry did seem to go rather well. I just basically pointed it backwards, it didn't overheat, and then something crazy happened. I mean, clearly this was a milkshake born into a burger's body, and it really wanted to shake itself up and essentially tore itself apart. Not sure what exactly happened there because my degree doesn't really cover the dynamics of burgers in space, but it appears that some of the flat stuff does actually have some semblance of control. The the ketchup bottle, of course, being full of high density, potent ketchup, it just kind of descends groundward very quickly. The tomato and the pickle moves okay, but this, oh, there we go, yep, that's it exploding. The lettuce and cheese looks like it may have the best chance of survival. Although it's spinning around like a crazy spinny milkshake type thing, it is only doing 35 meters per second, which, well, in some circumstances may actually be survivable. I don't know if they have crash tests that ascertain the survival probabilities or possibilities of produce and or dairy products, but I would just guess that the slower they're going, the more likely they are to survive. The bun, well, the bun actually still retains control capabilities, so I fold it out sideways and say, hey, I can in fact fly this thing. So with a bit of work, I put it into a descent pattern, a glide slope. Notice that my vertical speed is actually lower than my horizontal speed. This bun is indeed flying like a UFO, except it's not a UFO because we know what it is. It's a burger bun. Granted, we don't know what kind of burger bun it could be. It could be one of those like gourmet ones that doesn't just have sesame seeds, or it could be one of those, McDonald's style ones that are pumped up with lots of steam to make it seem fluffier. I mean, if it bounces, it's probably a McDonald's bun. If it actually flies, then it's probably something more rigid. So there we go. Leveling out here. Watch the speed drop. Vertical speed is 8 meters per second. Glide, glide, glide. Oh, no. Never mind. Well, so much for that. First burger to the moon. And the only thing that was preserved after the crash were the pickles. I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.